asked because there are very conflicting reports each and every time. You know, you hear civil society organizations coming out with reports, etc. Numerous ratings really saying Ugandans are the happiest people. Then the other day you hear Ugandans are very lazy, like you're saying today. Then the other day you hear Ugandans are most entrepreneurial people. So we are really confused. And for me, I know Ugandans are really very hardworking. So where do you get these findings, and who are you speaking to?
Okay.
In brief, tell us about this research and then give us the highlights and how these highlights come into reality.
Okay, thank you for hosting me. So for this survey, it was conducted in May this year, 2018, and we spoke to a cross-section of Ugandans that is spread across the entire country, and we had a response of 1,925 Ugandans out of the unoriginal panel that was recruited last year in 2017 around August, September, which was comprised of 2,000 Ugandans. So the report is representative of the 13 sub-regions of Uganda. And you have mentioned that at some point we say Ugandans are very entrepreneurial, and then at the same time we say that Ugandans are lazy. And
then the other day we say we're the happiest people in the region. So
well, about the happiest, I can't comment on that, sure, because it wasn't a report from Twaweza. But the last brief we shared, which was about under pressure, that was financial inclusion, we did state that if Ugandans are given an incentive or a cash flow of around 350,000, how would they use that money? What we had thought would probably find in that survey is that Ugandans would probably do some leisure activities with that money, but the key thing that they did mention was that they would invest that money in businesses or agriculture input as well as education. So that is when they do get that money. But for this specific survey, we see that when we ask Ugandans, why do you think some households are poor? Not why do you think generally Ugandans are poor, why do you think some households are poor? And they do say that it's because of laziness and a lack of effort. And at the same time, they do not contradict themselves. Ugandans, when we ask them, what is it that is most important that you can do to get ahead, they do say that working hard is the key thing that can get you out of your current situation and push ahead. And in addition, they do mention education. About 20% do say that.
So what do they mean working hard?
Working hard, get up, go to the farm or to your workplace and work hard. But further in this research, we do ask them, do they see a divide between, a large gap between the rich and the poor? And we see that 95% of the citizens do agree that there is a large divide between the rich and the poor. And we further ask, whose responsibility is it to address this gap? Who can reduce that? And 81% say that it is the government that can reduce that gap. So in as much as we do place the blame of poverty at the door of the poor, Ugandans do say that the government also has a role to play in removing this gap.
So what role would, okay, some of the recommendations probably maybe from Trust, because I see these reports and these findings and revelations seem to be collaborating with, for instance, reports that have come out before from the World Bank, a 2016 report saying Ugandans are grappling with growing inequalities, you know, households have very static incomes and, you know, they're not happy, etc., and how the gap is growing because the allocation of resources, if you look at economic growth, there's been some bit of stagnation actually within the period that you did the report. There's been some bit of stagnation, and when you actually look at the numbers also, they do not collaborate with you know, what you see in people's pockets. Okay, and so what exactly are some of the recommendations that you have for you're recommending that government actually does through its interventions to make sure that they get these people out of that poverty? Okay,
so because this is the citizens' voices, our point of recommendation would definitely come from what is it that citizens suggest the government can do for them. And we see that citizens are suggesting that the government ought to do more in providing free, quality public services. And this is more specific to health and education, because we know we have UPE, we have government facilities which ideally should be free, but a Ugandan has to pay a certain bit of money to get those services. And already we know that less than about 2% of Ugandans have health insurance, meaning the rest of the population has to pay out of pocket to get medical services, which again now puts the poor person at a disadvantage. The other recommendation that citizens put across is that there ought to be a reduction in regulations and taxes, especially for the small businesses. And we've seen in recent times the OTT, the tax on mobile money, that goes further to cripple the small businesses. Then we also see a recommendation on strong social safety
a lot of time. Yes.
nets. So if at all we are able to have social safety nets where a Ugandan has a fallback plan in case of a shock to my welfare, where do I turn to? In previous research we have seen that Ugandans will borrow from a friend or relatives. So what if the friends are also in the same bracket, they don't have money? Where does a Ugandan turn to? So the government ought to consider those three as a first point of reform to see what can be done to ensure that Ugandans have better wealth.
Thank you very much, Mary Nanyanzi from Twaweza, and you can clearly see that the issues are very many for government, but also people must actually really work hard to help the government grow the economy, which is of course sometimes growing slow, sometimes stagnating, and they also say they have priorities: infrastructure development, etc. So we'll come to those issues a little later. The story is really long. Thank you very much. We'll definitely come back to that conversation, and you can go visit us on our social media platforms in the event that you need to contribute to this debate, and we'll definitely get back to you. Let's move on. A South Sudanese surgeon has won a United Nations award for saving over 200,000 people in the war-torn country, and we have details with Joel Senyonyi now.
Surgeon serving 200,000 people in South Sudan has won a UN Refugee Award. Dr. Eva Nata Adaha is the only head surgeon who provides health services to locals and refugees in the country's northeastern region. In South Sudan, there's only one head surgeon who serves the population in the country's northeastern. He is this year's winner of the UNHCR Nansen Refugee Award.